Good evening, I'm Renee Shaw. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Welcome to a special 90-minute edition of Kentucky Tonight with 5 Republican candidates for governor. We're joined in our Lexington studio by Kelly Craft, former U.S. Ambassador to Canada and to the United Nations; Daniel Cameron, Kentucky Attorney General; Ryan Quarles, Kentucky Commissioner of Agriculture; former attorney Eric Deters; and Somerset Mayor Alan Keck. These 5 candidates met our criteria to appear and accepted our invitations. We do want to hear from you tonight, so send us your questions by Twitter at KYTonight, K-E-T. Send an email to kytonight@ket.org, or use the web form at ket.org/kytonight, or you can simply give us a call at 1-800-494-7605. We welcome all of our candidates. We thank you for participating. As always, KET strives to bring civil discussions to viewers. As a reminder to our candidates and to inform the viewing audience, the candidates have been given instructions on decorum, which include no disruptive, threatening, or inappropriate behavior during the program. Candidates are to remain seated and are to not approach another candidate in the set at any time during tonight's conversation. So with those rules re-emphasized, thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to have your time tonight.
Thanks, Renee.
We want to start with why you're running for governor, and then we want to delve down into the issues, and we'll sprinkle in some questions from audience members as we go along. By alphabetical order here, we'll start with you, Mr. Cameron, General Cameron. Let's ask you why you want to run for governor. And I want to remind our audience and you, in 2019, when you ran for Attorney General, you said at the annual Fancy Farm political picnic, you said, quote, the last 4 AGs were more, quote, aspiring governors than they were law enforcement officials. I'm running for Attorney General and nothing else, end quote. So from that statement that is on video, it's assumed that you aspire to be a 2-term Attorney General. What changed your mind, and why do you think you're now ready to be governor?
Well, I didn't know that Andy Beshear was going to shut down our entire state for nearly 2 years. We now have learning loss from our kids because he decided to shut down our state for 2 years. He shut down small businesses for nearly 2 years. I was at the point or the tip of the spear in terms of challenging and pushing back against the Beshear administration when they shut down churches but allowed big box stores to stay open. So I was in a unique position over these last 3 years to stand up for the values and the constitutional rights of the citizens of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and feel like we have had an opportunity to provide leadership and a counter to Beshear in a way that other candidates that are here today have not. And so on that merit alone, we felt called to jump into this race for governor and feel like, again, whether it's Donald J. Trump, who has endorsed this campaign, or over 100 law enforcement officials who have endorsed this campaign, or Kentucky Right to Life, we are in a unique position to build a coalition of folks that not only can win the May 16th primary, but can also retire Andy Beshear in November.
So for those within the Republican Party that accuse you of jumping line, that you perhaps have a thin line of experience, that you needed to wait your turn and pay your dues, you say what?
Well, I say, look at the track record. I'm the only candidate here tonight who can say that when Governor Beshear shut down churches, I went into federal court and after 9 days got churches reopened in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. When President Biden tried to force vaccine mandates on our state, I went into federal court and got those vaccine mandates stopped in the Commonwealth. And because of the work of my office, since last August, the abortion facilities have been closed in Kentucky. I'm the only candidate that has also brought in nearly $900 million to the state. And let me just, as a way of contrast, ultimately this race, and I know viewers out there as well, you understand this, this is about retiring Andy Beshear from the governor's office in November. And when it comes to the opioid epidemic, he filed a lot of lawsuits, but he brought $0 into the state. In 3 years, I'm in the process of bringing nearly $900 million into the Commonwealth to fight this opioid epidemic.
Of course, the governor has refuted that and said that it dates back even to Jack Conway when he was Attorney General, and that he had filed suits and you had filed just one. We'll talk about that more in depth.
If I may, Renee, filing suits is one thing. Bringing $0 into the state, which is what Andy Beshear did, is another thing. We are in the process of bringing in nearly $900 million. And that speaks for itself.
Final question before we move on. If elected governor, and if there was a vacancy in 2026 in Kentucky for a U.S. Senate seat, do you vow tonight that you would finish your term, if elected as governor, for the whole 4 years and not seek that open Kentucky U.S. Senate seat?
I'm running to be the governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky and want to help serve for the remainder of this decade as the governor. We've had failed leadership from Andy Beshear. Lockdowns and shutdowns, demoralization of our law enforcement community, higher murder rates in our largest cities. We need new direction, someone who reflects the values of the men, women, and children of all 120 counties. That's why I'm running. That's why President Donald J. Trump endorsed this campaign. That's why over 100 law enforcement officials endorsed this campaign. But
has any member of the Kentucky General Assembly endorsed her campaign?
Thomas Huff has endorsed this campaign. Danny Bentley has endorsed this campaign. The list goes on of individuals.
Thank you. Ambassador Kraft, welcome.
Yes,
thank you for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
This is your first go at elected politics. Of course, you've been in appointed positions, and we'll hear more later about the what, right? But right now we want to concentrate on the why. Why do you believe that right now you're best suited to be governor of Kentucky?
Well, thank you, and thank you to the audience that's watching this evening. And you know, I was reminded upon my arrival this evening, with over 100 people. We had coal miners, we had law enforcement, we had students from Commonwealth Baptist College, we had students from Clays Mill Baptist Church, we had children. This is why I'm running. It's more than just this election, it's for generations to come. And the issues that I've talked about, I've been traveling the state. I just had my 100th kitchen table event last evening. And I've been traveling the state listening to Kentuckians and their issues. I will take their voice to Frankfort. The issues they speak about, education, I understand education. I understand the importance of removing the woke ideologies, of removing anything that is an obstacle between our children, our teachers, and our parents.
So I want to get to that point. Your campaign, especially in the ad, seemed to embrace nationally trending messages and issues such as critical race theory and transgender issues. And many Kentuckians believe that those issues are far removed from their ordinary daily lives. So, and they're also saying that perhaps you're feeding into and even fueling the culture wars that are part of the political division that we see so much now. To that criticism, why have you leaned into those issues more than kitchen table issues like the economy or workforce?
You know, Renee, I'm leaning into issues that I'm hearing at people's kitchen tables. Parents are very concerned that they don't have the right to be engaged in their child's education. And you know, children deserve to have the right to have their parents engaged in their education. I have teachers and parents reaching out to me, sending me reading material, books that are available in their library that I couldn't read on television nor say on radio because it would be an FCC violation. We have to give our teachers who have a passion to teach the power to be able to teach skills, knowledge, arithmetic, writing, hopefully cursive, and reading, responsibility. We have to give them that power. This is what they've spent their entire career doing. You know, I just met with a football coach from Bryan Station who also teaches math. He wants nothing more than to be able to teach his students so they can reach their full potential.
In 2019, when Republican Governor Matt Bevin went after public education and educators, we saw how that ended up, and he lost to Andy Beshear by 5,000 votes. Do you fear that you're sending a message to public education that could render you the same fate?
You know, education is very important to me. My mom was a teacher. We have co-partnered and created the Craft Academy at Morehead State University. We are very engaged in Alice Lloyd College. Education is important to me. I'm speaking with teachers. I'm speaking with parents. They all want the same thing. They want their students, our children, our grandchildren to be taught skills and knowledge, not to be taught these woke ideologies. They want to have kids have an education where the schools are fit for them, not to have children have to change themselves in order to fit with this bureaucracy.
I'm going to go now to Alan Keck, who is the Somerset mayor. Thank you for being here. This is your first statewide campaign. You were elected Somerset mayor in 2018. Population of that city is about, what, 12,000?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you prepared to be the state CEO, given that you have a lot of private industry experience, not so much experience in elected office, and what type of voter are you trying to appeal to in this race?
I think I'm the most qualified, candidly. It's not a traditional path. We see the normal ladder, if you will, where you run for statewide office, you get your name out there, you pay your dues, as you mentioned, and then you run for governor. We've seen it across countless elections. My path is different. I'm a CEO. I was in the private sector where we helped run a family business. I understand the challenges of the economy from ground zero, of hiring and firing and assembling a team and making a payroll. You know, I've signed the front of paychecks, thousands of them, and I understand the struggle in Kentucky in that vein. And now I took those skills to Main Street, where we put Somerset on a rocket ship. You know, Somerset is a quintessential Kentucky city. You know, we're a top 10% in population. We're one of the largest municipal budgets. And just like Kentucky's economy, we were stale and stagnant. We weren't growing like the Commonwealth. And I built a team, I cast vision, and now Somerset is. People across this state are saying, how in the world are you getting it done? It's one of the main reasons I'm in this race. I want everybody across our state to see what we're seeing, to tell our story, and to start to succeed, because I'm sick of losing. I'm sick of getting our butt kicked by Tennessee, Indiana, and Ohio. I think we're better than that. And so am I qualified? Absolutely. I think I'm the most qualified. This is a great field. They're quality people who I think have the right interest at heart. But my experience is unique, our vision is unique, and we're telling that story across Kentucky.
You're up against some very well-resourced
Certainly.
competitors. So why wasn't that enough to deter you to get into this race?
Well, I care a lot about the issues. When we launched the Keck game plan, I said that at a minimum, we're going to talk about things that matter in this race. And I'm not going to be as well-financed as my competitors. I'm reminded of that almost every single day. But I want the conversation to be about what can transform Kentucky. Why are we 44th to 48th in virtually everything? And so when we launched on public safety and on growth in the economy, on education and pro-family policy, I'm really happy that we're talking about those things now. Workforce is a subject that we hear about every single day now. Education is a focal point, as you just mentioned. And look, if we're not talking about public safety, we're never going to have a strong Kentucky. I'm proud that I've led the way in these conversations. Win, lose, or draw, Alan Keck will be a part of the discussion, making sure that these things reach the finish line.
Thank you. Commissioner Quarles, welcome to you. Thank you for being here. I want to go back to when you ran for the State House back in 2010, probably seems like eons ago. You have said that your winning message was then essentially, why keep sending the same people to Frankfort if you're dissatisfied with the state's direction? For Republican voters who are still looking for fresh perspectives and are less impressed by establishment candidates and government insiders, what do you have to offer them?
Well, I have 8 years of running the second largest executive branch agency in Kentucky. We've done it scandal-free. We've cut the budget 5 times. I work with the Kentucky General Assembly, and unlike Andy Beshear, I don't sue them constantly. I'm focused on results, and I think that we need to have a sense of urgency. Where is the urgency when you look at the problems that drag down Kentucky? We have extreme poverty. I see it every week when I travel Kentucky. There are parts of our state that might remind folks of third world countries. Where is the urgency to fix these problems? You know, the Beshear family dynasty has been in control of our state in some capacity for 24 years. And what's happened? Our pensions have been weakened, our educational outcomes are about the same, and our rankings haven't improved. Now they're asking for 4 more years. I grew up very differently than the Beshear family. My daddy wasn't governor. I grew up on a tobacco farm, earned my way through life, started working at age 6 for $1 an hour. And that's the sort of work ethic I'm going to bring as the next governor of Kentucky. And when Andy Beshear shut down our government, shut down our economy, I did not hesitate. I'm the first person on this stage tonight to actually take him to court when he refused to work with our agribusinesses and successfully kept Kentucky open. I've kept 500 Kentucky-owned, family-owned businesses open during COVID. And I'm proud that we're the grassroots candidate in this race. I'm kind of taking a play out of Rand Paul's playbook and making sure that we work on the grassroots. And so I have 230 plus endorsements. I'm proud of that. It reflects the fact that we are the grassroots candidate, and I'm running to unite our state. It's been decades since we've had a governor that works with the Kentucky General Assembly. And we need to be looking beyond a 1 year or 2 year kick the can down the road mentality. We need to have a long-term growth set fix problems. Let's make Kentucky the best version of itself, Governor.
So as you attempt to try to unite Kentucky, does that mean that you're going to move your positions more to the center?
Look, I grew up in a family where you value your values, you value what you believe in, you stand strong with your convictions in life. And I know this for a fact, most Kentuckians are conservatives, but I have the track record of bringing people together as a consensus builder. I've done it as Agriculture Commissioner. We passed dozens of bills. I work with the Kentucky General Assembly. And for me, it's all about working together. And I want this race to be based off who has the best ideas. I think that we as Kentuckians deserve that in this primary. And so we're going to work hard. I challenge Kentuckians to choose and nominate the Republican who has the best chance of beating Andy Beshear. I'm the most qualified in this race as a former legislator, an executive branch agency head. And I know for a fact that we can beat Andy Beshear in the fall if I'm nominated, because I can unite our state together.
Thank you, Commissioner Quarles. Mr. Deters, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You say that you're running for governor to represent the disenchanted people across Kentucky upset about too much government. You're a Republican with libertarian leanings that you talk about. You're for recreational marijuana, for instance. What else would you work to do for as governor?
Well, unfortunately for the people of Kentucky, Kentucky has way too many problems. I have a meme that we've been using forever, which sets forth where Kentucky ranks in nearly every category. And it's sad. The reason why I'm running for governor is I host an event up in northern Kentucky called the Freedom Fest. 8,000 people showed up 2 years ago. Last year, 15,000 people showed up. And what people started doing is coming up and asking me, they said, Eric, why don't you run for governor? And I decided to run for governor. And here's why I'm running for governor and what I'm going to do. First off, I am the non-career politician running for office for Kentucky governor. I bring a totally different mindset to Kentucky than these other candidates do. I have a background in law, business, real estate, media. But my biggest thing that I want to do is take care of the people. I am running to be the voice of those people. I may be the most conservative candidate, but I also have the longest track record for genuinely fighting for people. They talk about what they've done when they were in political office for all these mandates and against Andy Beshear. The law firm which I'm associated with fought for 2 years for free for 5,000 healthcare workers against a mandate. I actually went to jail fighting for some victims of a Cincinnati doctor who did unnecessary spine surgeries on people. And I went to jail for contempt fighting for them. I am representing the truckers, the waitresses, the miners, the workers, union or not, all those people out there who are struggling. And people are struggling. And I'm running for them.
Mr. Deters, you mentioned about your law background, and I want to just bring up the point that in June 17th, 2021, an opinion and order issued by the Kentucky Supreme Court in the case of Eric Charles Deters versus the Kentucky Bar Association sided with the KBA in determining that you do not possess the requisite character, fitness, and moral qualification to practice law. The opinion conclusion states, quote, Deters' practice of law is not governed by constitution, rule of law, or procedure. It is anarchy. Given that decision by the state's highest court, why should voters trust you as governor of Kentucky?
Well, the reality is the people trust me because I fought that battle. First off, that court who issued that opinion is a Democratic court. They don't care for the likes of me because I fight for people. And that includes fighting against the system. I will say here on KET, on statewide television, there is no more corrupt system than the Kentucky court system, the legal system. There's no group of people that are more corrupt than the lawyers in the legal system. Big firm lawyers I battle every day, and I took them on and they didn't like it. The Kentucky Supreme Court doesn't like me because I wouldn't follow their rules. They're stupid rules that hold back people getting their justice. I'll fight for justice. I am proud of my battle against the Kentucky Bar Association and the Kentucky Supreme Court.
In March of this year, you pleaded guilty to 2 counts of harassing communications and a single count of menacing, all misdemeanors in Kenton County District Court. You also faced a charge of criminal trespassing, but that count was dropped, court records show. Can you explain those actions that led up to the charges
Yes.
and your pleading?
Yes, and I'm very proud of that as well. And let me explain. See, the rank and file Kentuckians get me. They understand what I'm all about. That situation that you brought up involved my nephew trying to hit my wife with his truck as he drove by her all summer long. Actually trying to scare her. I'm getting my mail one day, and he flips me off, and I had enough. I went after him to tell him to stop. Never threatened him, never did anything. But the bottom line is, you know what menacing is in the state of Kentucky? If you scare somebody. So I pled guilty. It's a much ado about nothing, but I can tell you right now, all those people out there watching this, how many Kentuckians would put up with somebody who was harassing their wife with a truck, acting like they were going to run over him? I didn't, and I won't. I'll never put up with it.
Final question to you before we talk about the issues. Today, you filed a lawsuit in Fayette Circuit Court
Correct.
that's challenging the residency of Ambassador Kelly Craft.
Correct.
What are the grounds on which you filed that lawsuit?
The grounds are everything in the public record, and it's my opinion that based upon the public record, that Kelly Craft has not lived in the state of Kentucky for a consecutive period of time of 6 years under the state constitution. She may or may not have created a legal domicile, but that's not it. My roadmap is the Hunter Bates case. The Hunter Bates case, he got removed by an Oldham County Circuit judge. He was working in Washington, D.C. all the time, claimed to be an Oldham County, Kentucky citizen. It's my belief that she is not a resident of Kentucky, that she actually lives in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
So let's have her
and the
give-
lawsuit lays it all out.
And so what do you want to have accomplished from the lawsuit? What's your end goal with this?
Well, what the lawsuit says, an injunctive relief to where a circuit judge says she's not qualified by residency to run for governor of Kentucky.
Ms. Craft, your response.
Thank you, Renee. That is absolutely not true. I was born in Kentucky. I was raised in Kentucky. I graduated from public high school and University of Kentucky. I raised my children here. I have a home here, my only home. I pay my taxes here. I was vetted by the FBI, the State Department, Donald Trump, and the U.S. Senate, not once, but twice. And on my confirmation papers, it reads Kelly Craft of Kentucky. I've been traveling the state, and no one is asking me whether or not I'm a Kentuckian, because they know that I care about them. I am traveling and I am listening to their issues, and I'm going to take their issues, take their voice to Frankfort.
Do you have dual residency in Oklahoma?
No, I do not.
So let's move ahead and talk about some issues that we know that you're probably concerned about. And we'll start with reaction to the Louisville mass shooting and gun laws and policies. And I'll start with you. I'll try to alternate those who I start with first. We are, I should say at the very beginning, we are all extending our well wishes to LMPD officer Nick Wilt, who continues to show progress, thankfully, after being shot in the head in the Old National Bank shooting on April the 10th. I want to go to you, Ms. Craft, and ask you, besides giving thoughts and prayers and accolades for the Louisville Metro Police Department's quick response, we know they responded within 3 minutes of getting the first call about that tragedy, did you pause your campaign activities and visit the city of Louisville to share in the collective grief of that community? Why or why not?
I immediately texted Louisville Mayor Greenberg to offer my condolences. We were traveling, and you know, I was traveling with Riley Gaines that day, and she felt Kentucky because she had just had the heartache of having a shooting in Nashville, Tennessee. So she understood the heartache and the pain that Kentuckians were suffering. My heart goes out to those, and I want to say that our proud, brave law enforcement arrived within 3 minutes. Citizens were helping law enforcement. Our EMTs, they were able to prevent additional tragedy and to save the lives upon. But what we have to do is we've got to focus on the resources for our law enforcement. We have to focus on resources to help them to monitor social media, to monitor other devices, to be able to intercept. We have to focus on our mental health issues.
And what about
removing the
focusing on
stigma.
gun access and gun control? Are you for any measures that would possibly help to reduce or eliminate these types of incidents from happening?
Renee, I'm not touching the Second Amendment and due process. We need to make certain that we follow the rules that are currently written, and we have to open the conversation of mental health, of mental illness.
So a Fox News poll published last week shows that most voters favor the following proposals. I won't read all of them. 87% favor requiring criminal background checks on all gun buyers. 81% in favor of raising the legal age to buy a gun to 21. 80% in favor of requiring mental health checks on gun buyers. 80% are in favor of allowing police to take guns from those considered a danger to themselves or others. 77% favor requiring a 30-day waiting period for all gun purchases. This was done by Fox News. Commissioner Quarles, do you agree with any of those proposals when it comes to gun violence prevention?
I'll tell you what I agree with is that we need to shift the focus to mental health. I've actually done something.
So that means
Department of
no to
Agriculture.
any of those proposals.
Look,
that
I got my first gun when I was in middle school. I was taught how to respect firearms, and I learned how to shoot it correctly through Kentucky 4-H. What we do need more is more gun safety training, especially for those that grow up learning about the Second Amendment. It's about personal protection. It's about hunting as well. I'm a big hunter myself. And
what
so,
about safety lock boxes?
Well, I think that that's a personal decision for families. That I think that the Second Amendment should be respected. Our due process rights should be respected as well. But the household I grew up in is like countless other Kentuckians, where I was proud that my dad taught me how to shoot a gun. Bought him one for Christmas this past year for personal protection. And I think it's important that we push gun safety, particularly with our 4-H shooting sports. It's one of the biggest, actually, high school athletic competitions in Kentucky now. But what we did at Department of Agriculture 2 years ago was start what's called Raising Hope Kentucky. We have a mental health awareness program housed at Kentucky Department of Agriculture that we started, collaborating with U of L College of Nursing, UK College of Nursing, several others that focus on mental health awareness, stress indicators, and suicide prevention, including markers that would help identify self-harm or harm to others. So we actually have something in place. I pulled down a $500,000 grant from the USDA. The General Assembly graciously put in another $500,000. So I actually have a program already in place that I think that we can scale up statewide. And we've got to stop the stigma that is associated with those suffering from mental health issues.
And so for those who do suffer from mental health issues, do you think they should be allowed to carry guns?
I think that before any Kentuckian, before any American has any right or privilege taken away from them, they are owed their due process rights, which is enshrined in the United States Constitution.
Mr. Keck, same series of questions to you.
Yeah, well, there were a bunch. I want to start by just talking about what I've done. When the world said to defund the police, we doubled down and added over $1 million to the police budget. Resources are essential. In Louisville Metro, we're 250 officers short. Statewide, I think we're close to 300 troopers short. You know, we have a governor who talks about giving raises, but then sent those same troopers to churches on Easter Sunday. We have to back the badge in word and in deed. There are some common sense things, though, that I do support. Back to the Fox News poll, it's interesting that they poll a question that already exists. We already have background checks. You know, you have to pass one to buy a gun legally anyway, and so that's a measure that's already there. I do think we have an olive branch on murder weapons. I think it's insane that those are being sold to the highest bidder.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know that Louisville Mayor Greg Greenberg has called for this, and
that
even
should not
the
be a
family of the
showpiece.
gunman.
It's a murder weapon, and I can't imagine that grieving family knowing that that gun is going to somebody else's mantle. I recognize that the argument is, well, that money's going to a small police department. Be a better leader and find some more money. That's what we did. That's how we gave over almost 40% raises
Do you favor
to police
that,
officers.
Ms. Kraft?
I am not going to touch the Second Amendment or due process.
It doesn't disturb the Second Amendment. It's not somebody's right to have it. They can buy a different gun, just don't buy the murder weapon.
You are fine with guns that have been used and the commission of a murder being recycled and auctioned and put back on the streets?
I am not going to take away money from our police. They are having a difficult time as it is with resources, lack of resources, and defunding the police. I'm not going to send that message to the individuals that benefit from the sale of weapons.
Commissioner, your thoughts on that? And then I want to get to this side.
Let's not forget that both the Democrats and Republicans passed that bill. So it's unfair to associate that with the Republican Party, period. We need to be working together. And then secondly, if you go to the KentuckyStatePolice.org website right now, they say that they benefit from those sales to help give officers body armor and other necessary resources. That's on the website right now.
So are you in favor of repeal or no, even though the law was passed in 2016?
I respect the law that was passed.
So let me now go to, are you finished, Mr. Keck?
No, but I'll save it for later.
Okay. If I can go now to General Cameron and ask you about that. Do you favor any of the proposals that the Fox News poll had put forth for those respondents to answer? Any of those would you be willing to support?
No, I don't support any sort of gun control. Second Amendment is sacrosanct, and we need to make sure that we protect it for Kentuckians all across the Commonwealth. And so I know that there are some in Louisville that want to support gun control. I do not support that. But back to the larger conversation about violent crime. You know, I offered a couple of weeks ago what I thought was a reasonable solution and something that meant that we were going to be taking action on this issue. And that was to put a Kentucky State Police post in Louisville, Kentucky. Again, if we have a violent crime issue, if we want to take a meaningful step to address it, let's put a Kentucky State Police post there.
Did you talk to the commissioner of the KSP about the feasibility of doing that?
Well, let me just say this. Governor Beshear came out and said that couldn't do that. It expressed a lack of confidence in the Louisville Metro Police Department, which is completely absurd. You go 40 minutes south to Elizabethtown, Kentucky, my hometown. There is a Kentucky State Police post in Elizabethtown, but no one goes around and says that we don't have confidence in the Elizabethtown Police Department. And in fact, the head of the Louisville FOP said, we need help, especially in light of some of the challenges we have with labor force and workforce with our Louisville Police Department. And
so that brings up the question about where would those state troopers come from? Would they be coming from other rural areas, and wouldn't those rural areas then suffer a shortage of troopers that they need?
This is what it's about to be a leader. Again, Governor Beshear has sat on his hands these last 3 years. A good and strong governor would be in our schools right now, encouraging and recruiting folks to join our law enforcement ranks. But Andy Beshear, because he is beholden to the far left of his party, can say absolutely nothing to encourage folks to join the law enforcement community. That's why over 100 law enforcement officials have endorsed my campaign for governor, because they know that I will stand up for them. I will help in making sure that we bring more Kentucky State Police into the ranks so that we can have a police post in Jefferson County. That should have been something that Governor Beshear did. Again, he sat on his hands these last 3 years, and we're going to hold him accountable in November.
Mr. Deters, your take on gun control, gun safety, gun legislation and laws?
Well, I am, again, for the Second Amendment, but I have a position that's different than everybody that's sitting on this platform tonight. I ask the question, when people die, it's always sad, it's always wrong. But I ask the question, did that bank in Louisville, did they have a policy against people who worked in that bank being able to carry a gun while they worked in that bank? I think that I stand with Kentuckians across the state, that I am sick and tired of the gun violence that happens, where the violence comes from those shooting and the people that are being shot are not armed. I want to compliment and praise the Republican legislature for enacting the law that gives us school resource officers in every school. I support a law that would allow private schools and other places where there's children to allow veterans, retired police officers, military people to be armed. You know, it's not about the gun, it's about the shooter. And let's talk about Jefferson County. Jefferson County's #1 issue is a crime problem. It is unbelievable how bad Jefferson County's crime problem is. And why is it bad? Because of the leadership of the city of Louisville. And guess what? There's crime every place. What do they focus on? They focus on the shooting at the bank. Not everybody else is getting shot every night.
So let me ask you, since you are a big proponent of the Second Amendment, campus carry. So we know that in the most recent legislative session that just adjourned in March, there was proposed legislation to allow those over the age of 21 to carry a gun on public colleges and university campuses, House Bill 542. It didn't get very far, didn't make it to the House floor for a vote. Do you favor a measure that would allow those over the age of 21 to carry on college campuses and universities?
I support it 100%. You know, when you join the military, you know, you're at a young age, you're younger than that. When you are somebody that's going to college and you're 21, you're able to drink. 21-year-old should be able to defend themselves if there's ever a shooting on that campus. I personally carry a .380 pistol in my pocket at all times. Not tonight because it was against the rules. I feel safe because I am armed. Kentuckians feel safe when they are armed, and that includes 21-year-olds on college campuses.
General Cameron, your thoughts on that measure?
Yeah, look, you're not going to find a dime's bit of difference between any of us on the issue of protecting the Second Amendment. Again, this legislation or others, we are certainly going to be in the position of protecting the Second Amendment. But I want to get
even
back.
though, because you say that you are the chief law enforcement officer and you back the blue, but during the committee testimony, there were university police chiefs who said, we're not for this. The university presidents are not for this. And even the Chamber of Commerce has said that this is a property rights issue, right? This is a private property or property rights issue. So given the fact that you back the blue, is that not incongruent with your position on that particular measure?
No, my loyalty is to the United States Constitution and the Kentucky Constitution and our Second Amendment right. And I'm always going to stand firm for that, and that, as the Attorney General, I've done. In fact, the Biden administration just recently tried to change the rules to regulate pistol brace stabilizers. I went into federal court to get that stopped because, again, my role as the Attorney General is to stand up for the constitutional rights of the citizens of all 120 counties. I did that during the pandemic. Again, when Governor Beshear told you who was a winner and who was a loser and who was essential and who was non-essential, I went into federal court and got churches reopened. I've shown repeatedly over these last 3 years that I'm going to stand up for your constitutional rights. You need a fighter to be your next governor, and that's me.
This side of the table, there's not too much daylight between you. So on this issue, I won't waste a lot of time. You all agree with campus carry?
I'm open to it. I've actually have shot with the UK rifle team on campus before. You know, they produce Olympians every single year.
So
and
that's a
if
yes.
you talk, I have a staffer who's 20 years old, goes to U of L, and there's a shooting within earshot multiple times a week right now. I think that I'd be open to it.
Yes, ma'am.
Mayor Kick? Okay.
Yeah, the Second Amendment does not end where the college campus begins.
Okay. So we're going to move on, and we are getting questions from viewers.
And it's not private property. Universities
Well,
are owned
that's
by the
public rights.
taxpayers.
Excuse me.
That's right.
That's right.
Some is private property.
Well, our public
Property rights.
institutions.
Right.
Right. Excuse me for misspeaking. We are getting questions in from the viewers, so we're going to compile those, and we'll get to those in a big chunk here in a moment. Let's move and talk about COVID. More than 18,000 Kentuckians have died from COVID since 2020. Some of you, all of you, have been critical of the governor, even right now during this conversation, have sued the governor. We know about that as well. But I have to ask you, at the height of the pandemic, at the onset of the pandemic, which is global, that so much was unknown, would you have practiced any mitigation measures such as face coverings? Commissioner Quarles.
No, I think that I've got a pretty clear record of challenging the governor. Again, first person to challenge him successfully to keep Kentucky's economy open. I also think that Ron DeSantis showed us that you can keep the economy open and walk and chew bubblegum at the same time. And Rand Paul was right. I mean, I'm glad that he's going after Dr. Fauci right now. I think that the economic harm that Governor Beshear has done to Kentucky is irreprehensible. He shut down family businesses, he shut down our schools, and he violated our rights as Americans when he sent police to our churches on Easter Sunday.
So would you have ever used any kind of mitigation measures when so much was unknown about the disease, such as face coverings?
At the very beginning, nobody knew much about this novel coronaviruses. You know, in agriculture, we deal with coronaviruses all the time with our animal health herds, et cetera. I have experience in quarantine protocol. But one thing I would have done differently than Andy Beshear, I would have listened to our business groups. I would have listened to our restaurants, which he shut down not just once, but twice. And so we needed to have some common sense there. And I think that the record's pretty clear that he ruled by a committee of one, and other states, neighboring states, had more freedom during COVID.
Same question to you, Mayor Keck.
Well, I've led during this. Folks can look at my record as mayor. I was going through many of the same things. I was taking the phone calls from single moms who are business owners, and they're asking me, how in the world am I supposed to survive? I can't go to work. I can't get a hold of an unemployment office, which, by the way, somehow that has been lost in this discussion. Yeah. The gravest disaster of the Beshear administration is he put people out of business and then didn't have the competence to get them paid. How were they supposed to survive? They wanted their government to do something, and I did. You know, I commend the efforts of the general on churches, but outside of that, there was a lot of silence, except from me. On April the 20th, I submitted plans to reopen our economy, and it ended up getting done 12 days before Ron DeSantis, you know, the COVID darling. We submitted more in May. And so I think the voters of Kentucky can look at this issue and see. I had the phone call saying, blood is on your hands, Mayor. How dare you? And I said, we're going to focus on lives and livelihoods. Yes, it was serious. President Trump wore a mask. He helped Operation Warp Speed and get the vaccine done. There has been so much revisionist history on this issue. The NCAA tournament was shut down. Next year, SEC football, which is, you know, the mecca around here, had stadiums half full, if at all. And so I would just challenge folks, look at the record. Google Alan Keck, Fox News, and we talked about reopening strategies in the heartland being different than anywhere else. We led in that issue, and I'm really proud of it.
So, Ambassador Kraft, many people say, we all know that you all are all pro-life, right? And many people have the question about pro-life values extending beyond just the unborn. And if you were elected, would you strive to strike a balance between protecting liberties, as I hear you all say, and protecting life beyond the unborn in case of a global health emergency such as we've just experienced?
So can we go back to the COVID, to the shutdowns for
this is the
just 1
same
minute?
question,
Perfect.
so sure.
You know, Governor Beshear made a conscious decision to shut down our state. Now, I'm not going to play Monday morning quarterback and talk about the first 2 weeks, first 3 weeks, because we were all following our administration's guidelines. But he made a conscious decision beyond that to shut down the state. He was giving unconditional unemployment benefits, basically telling people not to work. Well, you know what's happened? Kentucky is #1 in child abuse. Kentucky.
So you're saying child abuse rates are up because of the pandemic, because of the shutdowns?
Let me tell you why. Because children were not in school with the teachers that cared deeply about them. Children were at home, and they were at home many times without parents there, or with parents that the drug abuse escalated. So now we have children without parents because of the overdose deaths. We have to make certain that this does not happen again, and we need to be looking forward and be prepared so that we will never shut down our schools, because we have not yet seen the mental health consequences, the consequences of the very poor decisions that this governor made.
So what would you do? Let's talk about it in the affirmative. If it were to be another global health pandemic to the magnitude of what we just experienced, what would you do differently?
Well, I would certainly take note from the past. I would make certain that we do not shut down our schools, that we do not shut down our businesses, because the very fabric of our state was damaged.
Mr. Dieter, same question to you.
I'm somebody that believes that the COVID quote-unquote pandemic was overblown from the very beginning. And unfortunately, a lot of lives were harmed and damaged. What do we know now? We know that they phonied up the COVID deaths and the COVID injuries. We know hospitals were getting paid extra. I know this. They were getting paid extra money if somebody got COVID. They were being paid extra money by the government if somebody died from COVID. I stand with Scott Atlas, who's wrote a wonderful book about what went on inside that White House. I would not shut down this state at all unless it was the bubonic plague. In other words, you get it, you're going to die. We knew that, right? We knew very early on children weren't even getting COVID. And if they did get COVID, they didn't die. You had a group of people that were more susceptible to getting COVID, and you could have said, hey, if you're sick, you're overweight, you're diabetic, you got some lung issues, you be more careful. Everybody else, we're going to go on down the road. The damage that was done to the state of Kentucky and Kentuckians, and the sickest, most evil thing that this governor and corporate health care did is they made healthcare workers decide between their career and getting a vax that they didn't know anything about. And it is It is the worst thing that's ever been done to the American people since slavery.
General Cameron, I'll give you the last word about this particular issue, and then we're going to move on.
Oh, I need a little bit longer. Look,
Minute and a half, please,
the
sir.
challenge was that at the beginning, the decisions that were made by Andy Beshear lacked common sense. For instance, at some point he told folks that if you left the state and came back, you had to quarantine for a period of 14 days. So say you lived in northern Kentucky, wanted to go to cross the river to Montgomery Inn Barbecue. That's a 20-minute ride. Would get you a 14-day quarantine. Meanwhile, if you like barbecue and wanted to travel to West Kentucky, a 4 or 5 hour ride, say you wanted to go to Moonlight or Old Hickory, you could make that trip and didn't have to quarantine. That did not make sense. And on top of that, it was unconstitutional. I went into federal court and got that executive order overturned. Again, he shut down churches, he shut down small businesses, but big businesses got to stay open. Our view, I think most of us would agree, is that if you're going to allow one set of folks to play by certain rules, allow everybody to play by the exact same rules. Governor Beshear picked winners and he picked losers, and we are still suffering because of it.
So now we're going to take a series of questions that are coming in from viewers, and this one from Bob Fucinato. Quote, he says, you said you support the police when we talked about the Louisville shooting, but what about all the police that were injured during the insurrection on January 6th?
Is that for me?
That is for you, General Cameron.
Well, look, January 6th was a difficult moment, but as I've said repeatedly, President Trump knows that I'm a fighter here in Kentucky, knows that I stand up for our law enforcement community. I'm going to continue to do that. And there's not a law enforcement official in Kentucky, except maybe one that Kelly's found, that does not support this campaign for governor. And I'm going to keep fighting for them, whether someone asks a question like that or not. I have a responsibility to stand up for our law enforcement community. And I think they know that I've had their back over these last 3 years.
And you characterize January 6th as an insurrection?
January 6th was a challenge, and we've had protests. Look, the fact of the matter is there were protests all across this country in 2020. People were burning down buildings, destroying homes, and we don't talk about that anymore because that doesn't fit into the far left's narrative. We need to call a spade a spade. If we're concerned about what happened on January 6th, we need to be concerned about the destruction of property in Louisville, Kentucky during 2020 as well.
So this question I want to start with Mayor Keck on.
May I respond,
Yes,
if you don't mind? You know, let's talk about our Louisville Metro Police Department. Let's talk about the Attorney General appreciating Merrick Garland coming into Louisville, this woke DOJ, allowing Merrick Garland by saying, I appreciate him being here. I appreciate the fact that he's going to now oversee the Louisville Metro Police Department. What does that say about backing the blue?
Kelly,
We need to have complete confidence in our law enforcement. I have been sitting with law enforcement. I've been traveling across the state, and I can tell you what they need. They need resources. They need resources on the street with them, and they need resources within their office.
General Cameron, your response.
Kelly's been sitting with law enforcement and has got one to openly and publicly support her. I've got over 100 law enforcement officials that have supported and endorsed this campaign for governor. I'm going to continue to fight for them, whether Kelly Craft spends $10 million attacking me or not. I think I've demonstrated over these last 3 years that I'm going to stand firm for you. I'm going to do what's right without fear or favor. Whether they protest on my front lawn, I've demonstrated that time and time again, regardless if Kelly comes up with
General
buzzwords
Cameron,
or not.
should you have come out and with stronger words against the DOJ report? Would you be allowed to?
Well, the DOJ had a completely separate responsibility from what we did in terms of our investigation in Louisville. And I respect that decision that they made. But the fact of the matter is that Kelly has somehow sort of made a determination that I could have stood at the Ohio River and told the Department of Justice they couldn't come into the state. She's either naive or doesn't understand how the process works.
Mr. Dieters.
I'm the only person running for Kentucky governor who's publicly said January 6th is as much ado about nothing and they're political prisoners. But I want to ask Ms. Craft. She is the only person running for Kentucky governor who is at this platform tonight who praised Andy Beshear's handling of the COVID pandemic when it was going on. And she actually said she wanted to lift him up and everything else. And I'm going to come to the general's defense. You know what? Louisville has some issues. I think he'll acknowledge they had some issues. Merrick Garland, she wants to hit him with Merrick Garland, Joe Biden's left-wing, corrupt DOJ attorney general. Are you kidding me? Is she going to side with him? Probably does, because she sides with all the globalists.
So let's go to you, Ms. Kraft, to respond to the first
absolutely.
accusation
Thank
about
you.
lifting
Thank
the
you.
governor up.
Thank you. Let's talk about money for a minute. Our Attorney General, as we've all seen in the press and we've all read, is currently under ethics investigation.
Hold on.
And let me give you
Hold
the
on.
facts. The facts are very clear. Our legislators passed a rule that bans Paysomatic, a gaming company, from being in the state of Kentucky. Our Attorney General accepted $129,000 in campaign contributions. The next day, Paysomatic sued the state of Kentucky in the courts. Our Attorney General, who knew that our legislators banned Paysomatic, chose those donations over representing the state of Kentucky against this lawsuit. So I believe he owes the state of Kentucky an explanation.
General Cameron, your explanation, sir.
Well, the first explanation is that Kelly has not done her homework. And the fact that Kelly was desperate, and again, look, this has all come about because Kelly spent, as you know, Kelly, you spent 6 months telling folks that you were going to get the Donald Trump endorsement. You had him at the Derby last year. And then I got the endorsement, and your team has been scrambling ever since. And so what has been talked about here today is she got somebody who lacks credibility to file a complaint. He has his own campaign finance violations. On top of that, when he ran for school board, he's a white guy, pretended to be black. This is who has filed this bogus ethics complaint against me. The first thing is that I am recused from the case. The second thing, and Kelly sort of alluded to this, our office is defending the legislation that purportedly would help Paysomatic. So again, this is a crazy notion, but again,
But
Kelly
did you not
has
sign
spent,
the change of venue form? Weren't you not involved in the change of venue?
I was not involved in anything. We are recused from this case. But Kelly, again, has spent $10 million attacking me. When I'm the nominee, I just hope she'll be willing to part with some more of that money to help me beat Andy Beshear in November.
I'm getting tired of this
let's just
Trump
talk-
issue. Everybody keeps talking about Donald Trump. I'm the only person who's running for Republican governor who has defended Donald Trump since 2015. I'm the only one who is against Mitch McConnell. Everyone on this stage tonight except me is worried about Mitch McConnell. I'm against Mitch McConnell. I'm the only one that's defended Trump through all of it. Trump's getting subpoenas. He's getting his house searched. He's getting indicted. All these things have been happening to Trump. The impeachment, everything. For 4 years, they've all been silent except me. I have spoken up for Donald Trump from day one. And that's why I got the Trump bikers, Ride for 45, and rank and file Trump voters know that I'm the Trump candidate.
But
Well, can I
But
say
President
something?
Trump didn't endorse you. He endorsed Daniel Cameron.
Well, by the way, you know, he endorsed Daniel Cameron. And you know how loyal I'm to Donald Trump? I'm still supporting Donald Trump. He's the sitting attorney general. So Donald Trump decided to support and endorse the sitting attorney general.
Do you believe that President Trump won the 2020 election?
Absolutely. I'm the only person on this stage who says they stole it.
But
I've not been silent for 4 years. I've been leading a community in Kentucky talking about Kentucky issues. Look,
Not defending Trump.
We can fight over Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell all we want. I look for a day when we don't wait for crumbs from Washington to come and save us. You know, quite honestly, the last 10 minutes are why people are sick of politics in America. It's he said, she said, we're going to spend a pile of money to tear each other down. I want a Kentucky where we lift each other up and we get stuff done. It's exactly what I've done.
Kumbaya doesn't work.
It's worked in Somerset.
No, it hasn't. You got a
Mr.
drug problem and a water problem.
Mr. Dieters, do you believe that President Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election fair and square?
Yeah, he's been president for 3 years.
Same question to you, Commissioner Quarles.
I know Trump won Kentucky big, and I think that any election violation or fraud is one too many in America.
But the answer to the question is yes or no.
President Biden's our president.
Did President Biden win the election fair and square?
I know that Donald Trump won big in Kentucky, and that I think that there's reason to question some of the things that we saw in various cities around the United States. But I'm looking forward to 2023. I would like to have a conversation tonight about what it matters to Kentuckians.
And these
I
questions
think
matter
that
to
it's so-
Kentuckians because they're coming in from Kentuckians. Ms. Kraft, your response,
I would
and
like
we'll
to
get back
ask
to things.
Daniel, you recused yourself, so why didn't you return the $29,000 in contributions from Paysomatic to your campaign and the $100,000 donation from Paysomatic to your super PAC?
Kelly, I don't obviously have any control over the super PAC, but as I understand, you have a coordination issue with your husband, Joe Kraft, and that's under investigation right now. But back to the real point
No,
here.
we're
which
not
is
going to talk.
what-
We are
what-
going to leave my husband out of it. You know,
Ms.
men
Kraft,
have
Ms.
men-
Kraft, so because I want you to
Yes.
set the record straight about
Yes.
this. Apparently, there was some reporting last week that the biggest source of funding for the Commonwealth PAC, a group that's supporting your campaign, is your husband, Joe Kraft, who gave the group $1.5 million. The head of the Kentucky Registry of Election Finance said, quote, "It certainly raises concerns about potential coordination between your campaign and the PAC, which is a violation of state law." Your response?
That is absolutely not true.
Did you know about the contributions?
I did not. No, I was not aware of my husband's contributions. And you know, furthermore, men for decades have been talking about strong women. And let me tell you, I've been sitting at kitchen tables with strong women. I've been sitting with that single mom who's working 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet. I've been sitting with a grandmother raising her grandchildren, with a very proud female veteran that has served our country. I've been sitting with strong women. They're not asking about my husband. Do you know what they're asking about? That single mom that's working 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet, she's asking why able-bodied Kentuckians are not working. That grandmother that's raising her grandsons, her name is Dorothy. She's asking, when am I going to stop making choices between my utility bills and buying groceries?
Mr. Deters, your comment. Then I want to go back to a point that you just made about able-bodied
my
Kentuckians.
comment is Kelly Kraft is saying, my husband isn't going to be in this. Her husband is financing her campaign, and they're trying to buy the governorship. And you know what, Kelly? You got a commercial hitting Daniel Cameron about his connections with Mitch McConnell. I'm reading from Joe Zonka tonight, $1 million checks to the McConnell Senate Leadership Fund by Joe Kraft. You and your husband play both sides of the political aisle, Democrat, Republican. You try to buy politicians, you're trying to buy Kentucky, and it's not going to work.
Response, Ambassador Kraft.
I have worked tirelessly to make certain that we elect Republicans, leaders in the state of Kentucky,
And Democrats.
and Republican leaders on the federal level. I have worked tirelessly, my husband and I both, to elect President Trump the first time.
No, you didn't. You paid the
And
money for the
I have
ambassadorship.
worked
You bought an
tirelessly
ambassadorship, Kelly. You bought an
to make
ambassadorship.
certain that we protect our state, that we protect our democracy, we protect our rule of law, that we protect Kentuckians.
We need to protect
Because,
Kentuckians from an Oklahomian trying to buy the
I have been
governorship.
traveling this state, and I've been listening to Kentuckians.
We all have, Kelly.
I've not seen you out sitting at people's tables. I've not seen you out talking to people and listening.
Kelly, I give out my personal cell phone number to every Kentuckian and have answered probably 1 million questions. Do you give out your personal cell phone number to every Kentuckian so
Okay.
they can call you?
You know what,
Mr.
Eric?
Deters, let's stick
I
to
wanna
the
talk
issues if
about
we can.
Kentucky issues.
Yes, so let's talk about some Kentucky issues. We're getting some questions about budget and tax policy, so let's go there. And then I want to talk about a proposal about Medicaid eligibility and work requirements. So let's talk about the role of the governor essentially. And Commissioner Quarles, I'll start with you, if that's okay, sir. So as you know, in these last couple of sessions of the General Assembly, there has been a chipping away of the authority and the power of the governor. And there is a greater assertion of legislative independence that started way back with Governor John Y. Brown, but certainly has reached full tilt at this particular moment. The governor submits a budget, but it doesn't have to be approved by the General Assembly. The governor can submit his priorities and State of the Commonwealth address, but that can be shelved as well. In this last budget session in 2022, we know that the House Republicans submitted their budget a week before the governor submitted his. So given the diminished role and authority of the governor, why would you want to be it? And what do you think the role of the governor actually is? And would you actually assume as governor?
Well, Renee, thanks for getting us back on track here. You know, Daniel Boone said long ago that heaven must be a Kentucky type of place, kind of place. And I think it's important for us as candidates to talk about bringing out the best in people and having a discussion about what's best for Kentucky. And so I think it's important that as a candidate for governor that we bring out our best ideas. And that's what I want to do tonight. I'm going to continue to do for the next 15 days. Yes, as governor, I'm going to submit a budget this December to the Kentucky General Assembly to consider. It's going to do a few things. Number one, it's going to return every single dollar of coal severance tax back to the counties from which it came from. Secondly, we want to eliminate the estate or death tax. We're one of only 17 states that still has that. And we also want to make sure that we have a pro-business growth tax code that helps bring more Kentuckians here. And guess what? Kentucky was just ranked one of the worst places to retire to. We have two major military installations in our state, Fort Knox, Fort Campbell, and a lot of folks don't want to come back to Kentucky after serving a lifetime in uniform. And so as governor, I think it's important that we have somebody that has a good working relationship with the General Assembly. I think one reason why the House put out a budget before the governor did is because the governor right now, Andy Beshear, is irrelevant with the Kentucky General Assembly, and he proved it through 90 plus vetoes, a historic high. We need someone that's going to bring us together. I'm a former legislator. Imagine the day when we have a state of stability in Frankfort, we have a governor who sits down with legislative leaders of both parties, not in January, but in October or November, and says, these are the 3 to 5 things that we want to help Kentucky improve upon. I want to bring that era of stability. I'm the ideas candidate in this race. Please give us a chance because we need someone who brings us together, not tears us apart.
I'm sorry to interrupt. What do you think needs more funding and what do you think needs cutting?
Well, right now, I think it's important that we continue our step-down approach towards eliminating the state income tax that makes it a little bit easier to do business in Kentucky as well. Save some dollars in the back pockets of Kentuckians. So that's step number one.
Do you agree with the local option sales tax?
I'm open to that, but the thing is that local governments are restricted to 3 sources of income right now: occupational tax, insurance tax, as well as property tax. But before a constitutional amendment is passed, which by the way does not require the signature of a governor, so it doesn't matter who the governor is if a constitutional initiative is put on the ballot, that we need to make sure that we invest in public education. 47% of the state's $14 billion budget goes to K-12 and higher education, and it's important that we get a good ROI on education in Kentucky, and that includes a conversation about higher education, which has not been reformed for 26 years. House Bill 1 in 1997. We need to make sure that the cost of education is affordable and that our educational programs are aligned with what employers are looking for.
Do you think that there needs to be some realignment with higher ed? As you mentioned, didn't get a reform since 1997, severing the community colleges from UK and making those programs of distinction and
that's right.
all of that. So do you believe that it's not serving the business community well, or what do you think needs to change?
I think that it's important that we as taxpayers get a good return on investment. And so I'll just give you one example. We need more vocational and trade jobs in Kentucky. Welders, HVAC, carpenters, electricians. We need to make sure that our KCTCS and also our high schools and even middle school programs are better aligned for career pathways starting from middle school aged up. There is a welding school in Kentucky up in Fleming County that every month there's a 20-year-old Kentuckian who has a starting salary of $100,000 a year. Those are the types of jobs and realignment that we need to push out there. and I have a doctorate in education, I can be the education governor in this state that can make sure that with the limited resources that we have, we're a small state with big problems, that we can make sure we get the best out of our investment.
Mayor Keck, your ideas about higher education, and I don't remember the original question.
Well, the original question is, why do I want to be the governor if we don't have a lot of power? And it's because leaders are going to find a way to get things done. Exactly how I did. Why did I want to be the mayor? I wanted to transform the hometown that I love. You know, Kentucky hasn't reached its potential. This is an incredible place, and all Kentuckians understand that, but we're not reaching what we're capable of. A good leader is going to cast vision. They think in years and decades, not in political cycles.
So give us a specific, concrete example of what your vision for, let's say, higher education looks like, and a budget priority that you would make front and center.
I would love to. Let's start with the budget priority. Let's fund tourism, heritage, and arts and lean into what makes this state so special. We've done that in Somerset by telling our own story. We've had record growth on all three of those levels that the commissioner said, property tax, insurance premium, occupational, because we've grown at over twice the rest of the state. As far as higher ed, let's have a discussion about it being too long. It's now hard to graduate in 4.5 years. This guy's a machine because he did 27 hours a semester. But the average Kentuckian can't do that, and they can't afford to do that. Should it be a 3-year program? Let's have a discussion about reducing the cost and the time frame so folks can get back to work, since we have a workforce crisis.
So if you want to reduce the cost, many would say you also ante up on the state funding.
Sure, that's something we need to look at. Under the game plan, we're going to grow enough to fund that. I'll go all the way back. We're talking about selling murder weapons so we can buy body armor. You know, we're not going to have to worry about that if Alan Keck's the governor, because we're going to have fewer murders and a lot more money.
And how will we have fewer murders, sir?
We're going to fund public safety, and we're going to focus on hope and opportunity. People commit a crime because they're destitute. They don't have other options.
Many people would say hope is not a strategy. Give me a strategy.
Well, pro-family policy. Why does the conversation about life stop at birth? Should we give extended maternity and parental leave to folks that are starting a family? Same for those that choose to adopt and foster. Should we focus on incentives and funding for child care so that family unit gets stronger? Look, if we have and Kentucky can lead the way. Nobody's talking about this nationally. Pro-family policies will help reduce crime, help our workforce because people are going to get off to a better start, and our education system will also be stronger because behavioral health and mental health challenges won't exist as much when that family unit is secure.
Mr. Deters.
Well, we need a complete overhaul of our tax system. I have listened to thousands and thousands of Kentuckians. They get hit with the annual tax on their vehicles. They get hit with the death tax. They get hit with business tax, corporate tax. My whole campaign is less government, more freedom. We need massive tax reform. And
what would massive tax reform look like? Give me a specific instance.
No income tax.
And that's on the track now, right?
Yeah,
the legislature has passed legislation to do
faster.
that.
I take great exception with Ryan is a professional politician. He's got his robotic speech that he gives because he's been a 2-term agriculture commissioner. He's got to find another job, so he's running for governor. I'm the person, Ryan, who have put out 200 positions on DetersForGovernor.com. I have put out 500 videos on positions. There isn't a candidate running for governor who hasn't put out more policies, more positions. I do 10 Facebook Lives a day. People are going to get tired of seeing them. And you know what? He's starting to copy my policies. He even copied my idea of no more the governor's name on the entryway. The bottom line is, we need massive tax reform, and you know why? To create jobs. Less taxes, less regulations, we create jobs. If you talk to Eastern Kentucky, Western Kentucky, Louisville, every place, it's called economic development, and it's the old Ronald Reagan way. You cut taxes, you cut regulations, this economy would roar. Not just for the big corporate companies that Andy Beshear brags about and does a press release on. I'm talking about Main Street, family business, small business. And you know what? Alan Keck isn't the only one that signs a check. I have been an employer. I'm still an employer. I know what it's like to meet a payroll. And you know what? You can talk to any businessman across the state of Kentucky, small business, medium, family. And you know what? They're tired of the regulations. They're tired of the bureaucracy. They're tired of the taxes. And you know what? When Andy Beshear shut down the state, Kelly was trying to say it, and I guess her mind went somewhere else. The reality was, it wasn't child abuse. People couldn't get their unemployment because of the bureaucracy. We got a bureaucracy with driver's license right now. I mean, the whole state of Kentucky is filled with a bureaucratic mess, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to tear it all apart and fix it.
General Cameron, I want to come to you to ask you about something that Ms. Kraft just mentioned a moment ago, and that's about Medicaid work requirements. And we're getting several questions about that. And you, at a recent stop, had proposed that. I want you to talk about your proposal, and then we'll follow up.
Well, look, of course, obviously the governor expanded Medicaid a year ago, and what he did was expand it to able-bodied participants. Before that, Medicaid was for medically necessary or means tested, but he expanded to able-bodied participants, but he put no work requirement on it. As all of us have stated in some manner, we have got a workforce and labor participation crisis in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. If we have some of these programs and projects that are coming online, we're going to have people that are working. I hear from folks in job recruiters all across Kentucky who say that they are concerned about our future ability to fill these jobs because of the abysmal workforce participation rate. And so it's my view that Medicaid, and I think a lot of viewers believe this, should be a transitory program unless medically necessary or means tested. Those able-bodied participants, we got to get them back into the workforce. Shouldn't be something that they have to stay on Medicaid for the remainder of their life.
So give us some concrete specifics about what the work requirements would be like. Could it be community service? Could it be that they're enrolled in a higher education experience or an education experience? Give us the specifics. And this sounds very similar to something that Governor Matt Bevin tried.
Well, absolutely. It could be volunteer. It could be 20 hours. It could be, look, and let me just say to those that are listening right now, if you are a mother who has a baby at home and aren't able to get out into the workforce yet, that is okay. This is not targeted or applying to you. I want folks that, particularly healthy individuals that have the able-bodied component, I want them to be able to go out into the workforce and help with our low workforce participation rate.
And if they don't, what's the consequence? They're off Medicaid, right? Which could affect, according to the last plan, 100,000 Kentuckians. So,
well, good. Look, ultimately, I want to make sure that we encourage people to get back into the workforce. Again, Medicaid has to be a transitory program. It doesn't need to be something, again, for able-bodied individuals that they stay on for the remainder of their life.
Do you agree with that, Ms. Kraft?
Absolutely. You know, I think that Medicaid should be a pathway to dignity. It needs to create a pathway for able-bodied Kentuckians. Those who can work, whether it's making certain that they apply for jobs, that they have community service, that they are attending education courses, but it needs to be a pathway to take them from poverty to work. That's dignity. And you know, and I have an economic plan. I negotiated the largest trade deal in American history, USMCA, United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement. That trade deal brought millions of jobs to America. It prevented us from outsourcing jobs to China. I was able to bring thousands of jobs to the state of Kentucky and to create opportunities in the state of Kentucky from our family farms, our small, medium-sized businesses, to our auto manufacturing. And Kentucky is going to have an energy revolution. This country is. And we have to be ready because it's going to require more and more electricity. And that electricity is going to be helping families grow, create job opportunities. And we need to look at what Kentucky has abundance of. What is our edge? It's our fossil fuels.
I don't want to get off that conversation too much before I ask the other candidates their position, but when it comes to the energy needs of Kentucky and the nation, should it be extended, the portfolio, more than just coal? Do you embrace nuclear power? Do you embrace solar, renewable options as well?
I embrace what is going to be a free market value, what is going to grow our economy. And right now, Kentucky has an edge with our fossil fuels. You know, I'm tired of losing jobs to Tennessee. I want us to win. If you look at where Tennessee was 20 years ago, how did they get to where they are today? It's because they elected business leaders who understand how to create jobs. I have personally, my family has created thousands of jobs in this state. I understand how to create jobs. We have to make certain that our fossil fuel industry, which is reliable, affordable, abundant, whether it's fossil fuels, nuclear, gas, we have to make certain whatever it is provides Kentucky with the lowest cost utilities, with the advantage when we're competing with Tennessee, Indiana, Ohio, South Carolina, Georgia. You know, it's not enough to win on the basketball court and the football field. We've got to win in the economy.
Commissioner
and I know
Quarles,
how to do that.
So let's go back to the other conversation about Medicaid work requirements. Favor? No.
I believe so. We need to get Kentucky back to work. We need to stop people from sitting at home and watching Netflix all day. You know, I grew up on a family farm. The concept of not working in life never was an option for me. Everything I have, I've earned on my own. And we need to have somebody in the governor's office that grew up that way, that you need to be able to think like you because they were raised like you. That's really who I am as a person. I'm a hard worker. And so for me, whenever people are healthy, able-bodied Kentuckians, it actually takes away from those that truly do need benefits, like the disabled and those that truly need help. I work with vulnerable populations all the time with my food insecurity initiative, the Kentucky Hunger Initiative. We need to be making sure that we encourage people to get back to work. Employers need it. Number one, we only have a 56% workforce participation rate. Most economists say that we need to be high 60s, if not 70%. On day one, when inaugurated, we're going to appoint a task force that focuses on workforce in Kentucky. It's about benefits reform. Number two, workforce development. Number three, training between job to make sure that Kentuckians are adequately trained, maybe a mid-career change as well. But we also want to work with our employers in the Kentucky Chamber to make sure that we get it right. When it comes to energy, I believe in American energy independence. We need to make sure that energy is produced here in America, so we're not dependent on foreign countries for our fuel or economic freedom. And that includes embracing the natural resources that God has blessed Kentucky, whether it's coal, whether it's timber, robust agriculture as well. And then one thing that I want to bring to Kentucky is sustainable aviation fuel. We are an aviation hub of the United States. Last year, United Airlines filled up a plane from Chicago to DC and ran it on soybean-based 100% renewable fuel. And guess what? We grow over $1 billion worth of soybeans in Kentucky each year. Imagine the day when we can refine that soybean into jet fuel with no engine modifications. No state is aggressively going after this. These are the big ideas that we're advocating in my campaign. And so why not have homegrown American Kentucky energy independence?
And do you agree with broadening that energy portfolio to include nuclear and solar?
Yes, I'm a all the above approach when it comes to this, as long as it's free market driven.
Mayor Keck.
Yeah, this is another area where I think my leadership has been really evident. You know, the folks that I'm sharing the stage with tonight had all been candidates for months when I filed. And we launched with a workforce development idea of taking care of the working poor instead of paying those unwilling to work. You mentioned 100,000 people that this could affect. We have 160,000 unfilled jobs in Kentucky. Our effective unemployment in this state is zero. And it's another area that, again, I keep pointing back to it. But in Somerset, where we've led the way, we're doing reentry training in our jails, where we're training women how to weld and they leave with a career. It's one of the few areas where Ryan and I might disagree. He advocated to pay people to go back to work, a work bonus, while we were fighting the governor on the $300 stimulus that was coming from the federal government.
I'd much rather spend our resources getting people back to work than sit at home and do nothing.
Absolutely, but let's get creative, and we shouldn't have to pay people to go back to work. They didn't need a bonus when those jobs were there. If we're going to talk about able-bodied Kentuckians, they need to go back to work. Now, those that need some of that benefit, that's different than a one-time stimulus check. We're talking about a safety net, not a hammock. And we again, it's an area where we've led aggressively, and we did it from the front.
Mr. Deters, real quickly before we
Coal
move on.
needs to be protected. I'm for all the above. I'm against solar farms. I want Kentucky farms being for agriculture. I'm for nuclear energy. But we have to protect coal. I do want to just say this. I'm sorry. I get tired of Kelly claiming that she created jobs when it's her husband created jobs. And I just filed today a laundry list out there. She acts like she cares about people. Well, they don't care about miners with the Alliance Coal Company, because I'm telling you right now, the number of infractions and mistreatment of coal miners is long.
Ms. Kraft, your response.
Have you been down into a coal mine? Has anyone been into a coal mine?
Yes.
You know, those are the hardest.
I got Harlan
men-
County roots, Kelly.
Excuse
You're
me.
from Glasgow.
You know what? Excuse me. Allow me to speak. Kentuckians deserve more than this, Eric.
Kelly,
Kentuckians deserve civil discourse.
we've
I
had
have
civil
been
discourse
traveling
here.
across
You
this
attack the
state.
Attorney General.
I've been
you run
traveling
negative ads,
across
and
this
then you
state.
don't like when somebody
You know,
calls on
okay,
you.
Mr.
And then
Deters,
you
let's-
play the woman card.
Let's take
You
the
know,
temperature
there's a
down
clown
and
in
let's
every
return
circus,
back
I
to
tell
some
you.
issues here because we only have 10 precious minutes remaining. There's some questions about education we want to get to first. How many of you want to get rid of the current education commissioner? Can you dismantle the Department of Education?
Yes, you can.
Well, according to state law, the Kentucky Department of Education is a separate agency that is not under the control of the governor's office. How would you go about
Well,
that
as
then?
governor, on my first day, you will write an executive order asking our legislators to ratify reorganizing the Kentucky Department of
Does
Education.
anyone else favor the dismantling and refresh boot of KDE?
Absolutely not. We need a strong.
Mr.
Okay.
Deters,
Okay, I'm sorry.
if you'll wait for just a moment. General Cameron.
I don't know exactly what Kelly means by dismantle, but look, when you have a commissioner at the Department of Education in the name of Jason Glass, who goes before the General Assembly and tells them that if a teacher at all expresses any concern or reservations about the gender ideology curriculum, that they need to find another job, that's not the right answer. The right answer is that Jason Glass needs to find another job. And as the next governor of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, I will make sure to work with our legislature to appoint new board members to the Board of Education that reflect our values, that are more concerned about reading, writing, and math, as opposed to schools being incubators for progressive ideas. And then that board will make sure that we have a new commissioner at the Department of Education.
So progressive ideas, because we've heard a lot about wokeism and that there is critical race theory happening in our schools, which it is not. Do you have proof otherwise, General Cameron?
Well, look, CRT as a curriculum, I'm thinking about and talking about CRT as an idea. For instance, I know in a school.
But CRT
here-
as a curriculum, you do not have proof that that's happening anywhere in
curriculum as an
Kentucky.
idea. For instance, in 2020, students in a elementary school, not even a high school, in an elementary school, were being asked to analyze the Black Lives Matter protests. Now they're spending resources and special time in a class analyzing that, discussing and debating that, as opposed to working on reading, writing, and math. So you can say that CRT as a curriculum is not in schools. I'm saying that CRT as an idea is creeping into our schools.
Mr. Deters, real quickly.
I do not know if CRT is in the school, but I oppose it if it is. I'm for school choice, charter schools, homeschooling, and I would fire Glass, but we have to have public schools. And what Kelly is trying to imply is this, I'm going to read it. She can't do it, as you just pointed out to her, but we need a strong public school system. Not everybody's going to be going to private schools.
Well, and even school choice advocates will say, and they have on this program, that public education, traditional public education, will be the mainstream, most used modality for educating Kentucky's children and the nation's children. So I want to go to you, Mr. Quarles, your thoughts on the reality of wokeism, what that actually means, and CRT and those other issues that many people have questions about, where you stand.
Well, to answer your question, I've said this before, I think that wokeism is synonymous with cancel culture, and that we need to be more accepting in society that if you make one mistake in life that your career isn't over. But when it comes to education, it's so important that parents have a say-so in what their kids are exposed to in the classroom. Number two, I'm the son of a public school teacher. She spent 30 years in the classroom. I cherish our teachers. They're trying to do two things. They're trying to teach and then raise other people's kids. I support discipline reform in the classroom so teachers can take control
That's
of their
already been
learning
done. That
environment.
was accomplished in the last session of the General Assembly.
I think that one iteration has been done, that it needs to continue. We're going to see where it's going to go. And then I'm also a big supporter of our homeschool community across Kentucky. But what I think is important is that we give our teachers a a welcoming environment. I talked to a teacher today on the phone.
More pay?
That I think that's part of it, but
Yes.
it goes beyond.
How much
it goes
more?
beyond compensation. It's about having a work environment where they feel respected in the classroom, and it's kind of similar with our men and women in law enforcement. That we need to have a work environment where people have respect for our teachers, respect for law enforcement, and that's one thing that I think we need to focus on with not just teacher recruitment, but teacher retention, which is a big issue right now, with holding on to the teachers we already have employed.
Renee, if I may.
And not talk about it on an election year.
Right.
Talk about it every single
General
day.
Cameron.
If you are a teacher at home watching this program right now, the Democrats are going to lie to you and tell you that we don't appreciate you and respect you. I'm married to a school teacher. Mackenzie Cameron taught in Oldham County Schools for a number of years. And I want to say on behalf of everybody that is here that we value you, we appreciate you, and know that there are Republican governors, whether it be Governor DeSantis in Florida or Governor Huckabee Sanders in Arkansas, who are leading on the issue of education, who are making sure that there are pay raises, whether it be starting salaries or other bumps that come along the way. Andy Beshear gives a lot of lip service to you as teachers, but he does not have your back, especially if you are a teacher that has at all expressed any reservations about the gender ideology that is creeping into the schools.
So to the point about Governor Beshear had proposed a 5% pay increase for teachers and before the General Assembly, which is similar to what you have also said you support. I want to go now to Mr.
But if I may, on that point, the problem that Andy Beshear has, and the reason that he has done nothing of consequence in his first term, is to the point that a lot of us have been making today. He has absolutely no relationships with the legislature.
You cannot ask for a 5% raise on an election year. We need to be talking about our teachers' salaries every single day. We need to make certain that they have the resources in their classrooms. My mom was a teacher. I understand how to build a school. We have the Craft Academy. I understand the importance of having teachers that feel appreciated.
Renee, I don't know if Kelly was agreeing
certain-
with me or she was just cutting me off.
So, so I want to go to Mr. Keck because we need to get Mr. Keck
I like
in.
that idea.
Okay, so talk to us about elevation of public education, and we've got 3 minutes remaining. School choice. So you for it or against it? And how would you ensure that there's accountability for private schools, that they don't just pick the students that are high performing, and if there are accountability measures when it comes to their finances and student enrollment? Go.
I think it's been a lie from the left for a long time that you can't support school choice and public school. That's nonsense. I'm a product of public schools. My 3 daughters, by the way, I live public school every single day. And the majority of the folks that I see absolutely are there because they care deeply and immensely. Accountability is one of the things that we should demand in exchange for raises. You know, I think Kentuckians are sick of promises from politicians and they never get delivered. What the governor won't tell you is how he's going to fund it. I think the folks on this platform can tell you that we're going to grow an economy that will allow us to pay the teachers for what they're worth and what they deserve.
Mr. Dieters, real quickly, 30 seconds.
I decided to run for governor of Kentucky because there's a lot of people out there who are hurting, people who need a champion to fight for them. So that's why I'm running for governor. And what Kentucky needs right now is somebody that will fight for you, who's not a career politician, who understands your plight. I want to be your voice. Get behind me, support me, vote for me, and we're going to change the way Kentucky does things. We're last in almost anything, and I wasn't on the job. We need to make Kentucky great again. Let's do it together.
So I'm going to give you 30 seconds, General Cameron, for a closing statement. 30 seconds.
Together, you and I can have a better and brighter Kentucky. We can have one in which we prioritize the rights of parents to be involved in the educational opportunities of their kids. We can have a Commonwealth in which we keep our streets safe from crime and drugs. We can have a Commonwealth in which we empower and support our law enforcement community, that we look out for the unborn, our most vulnerable. That's the type of Commonwealth we can have.
Ms. Kraft.
Yes, I am the only one that when I speak about jobs, when I speak about education, and when I speak about this deadly fentanyl, the only one that has lived it, experienced it, and created it. You know, we've got to go back to the family table. We've got to put God back at the center of the family table. That's
Mr.
what's
Quarles,
missing in our families.
real quickly.
My mom taught me at a young age that a teaspoon of honey goes a lot further than a jar of vinegar. Let me be the candidate that unites our state, who has the best chance of beating Andy Beshear in the fall. Look, Kentucky's had a lot of rough times lately. We rank low on just about everything. She has wept bitter tears. Let me be the man that dries those tears and unites our state
Mr.
and have
Keck,
long-term vision.
Mr. Keck, 15 seconds.
Just like President Reagan asked, are you better off than you were 4 years ago in 1980? I ask, is Kentucky better off than it's been? Elect a do something common sense change agent that has fruit in their life that suggests we can get Kentucky on the right track.
Well, that'll do it for tonight. I need another half hour or maybe another hour to get to everything. We thank you for joining us tonight for this very important discussion. We will have more interviews next week with candidates on Kentucky Tonight at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. Be sure to join us each weeknight at 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central for Kentucky Edition. And join Bill Bryant and a panel of working journalists who will break down all the news of the week on Comment on Kentucky Friday at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. Thank you for watching. Take good care, and I'll see you soon.